I don't even know what to say.
We're not completely losing a race team, a solid, big team race team.
The concern's not even the Joe Gibbs racing team, because, I mean, you talked about the equipment, the talent. It's how far off 2311 and Legacy Motor Club seem to be.
Not that we haven't been trying other stuff, we just have not figured it out.
You know, you never know when you're just going to have an off weekend.
I've kind of gotten the ability to have the platform that I want, and it is my platform, and I can speak to whatever I feel like talking about.
We were in the mix, and it makes it a lot more fun when you're in the mix than you are just, struggling and trying to figure out what direction to go.
Yeah, it's tough, and sorry for being bouncy, the roads here.
It's like if you have, the all-you-can-eat buffet every single day of the week, people are going to get tired of it, right? So if it's a special thing, I think people get more excited for it.
Hi, Bo.
Raise your hand up so she can see it. There you go.
Truthfully, even as a company, I think it was, very head-scratching why at the beginning all four of us just went instantly straight to the back. We just really struggled.
Welcome on to the Backstretch. I'm News 5's Heather Williams, and apparently it's Ford's world, and we're just all living in it. Other than Kyle Larson, there is no entity hotter right now in the Cup Series than the Ford drivers. They have won 4 of the last 6 races, if you include the All-Star race in that group. 2 months into the season, everybody was leaving Ford for dead. They don't know the dark horse. It's not going to work. It's not going to work out. They're really lost. Well, they have found themselves for sure. That is just one of the things we're going to talk about with our crew chief, Chris Carrier. We're also going to talk about, on the flip side of the coin, what has happened to Toyota. They started out the season red hot, but other than Christopher Bell, and we're going to tell a great story involving Christopher Bell coming up in my final thought a little bit later on. But other than C-Bell, the Toyotas have really been struggling over the last few weeks at tracks that generally they do pretty well at. So, you have to wonder what's going on in the Toyota camp right now. We are going to talk about that as well and preview this weekend's race at New Hampshire, which should be a get well race for specifically Joe Gibbs Racing, but the Toyotas as a whole, if they are really capable of getting well at this point in the season. My guest this week is Daniel Hemric. Love talking to Daniel. He and I first met on a road trip about 6 years ago with the Bristol Motor Speedway. We drove from Knoxville to Nashville for an event at the Predators. It might actually have been a little bit longer than that at this point. He was still pretty new in the Xfinity series at that point. And I love his journey, right? He's just a guy with a really interesting story. He, scrapped and clawed to find his way in the Xfinity series, made it to the Cup Series, only lasted the season, took a step back, won a championship. Now he's back in the Cup Series with Kaulig Racing. So we will kind of talk to him about his season, how it's going. They've had some struggles for sure, and where they feel like that program's going. So love talking to Daniel. And then for my final thought, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the gaffe heard round the world by Christopher Bell. So let's get it rolling. Joining us now is our crew chief, Chris Carrier, who's also the crew chief for the number 75 Food Country truck in the Craftsman Truck Series. Chris, Ryan Blaney picks up the win at Iowa, and it wasn't too long ago we were worried about those Fords. Now Fords have won 4 of the last 6 races, so it's all fixed for Ford, right?
Well, it's I don't know that it's all fixed, but it seems to be going very much in the right direction for them. And, Blaney's win at Iowa, one of the main competitors, probably his biggest competition, Kyle Larson, got took out in a crash, 3/4 of the way through the race, and it kind of left the door open for a much easier victory for Blaney. It was kind of redemption from him because of his heartbreak at Gateway when he ran out of gas there on the last lap. His teammate Austin Centric won the race. But, Heather, the Ford teams seem to be getting things together. It looks like the flow of information is getting out, trickling to all the teams pretty well. The front row cars run good. The Stewart-Haas cars ran better the last couple of weeks. They had a couple fast cars at Gateway as well as Iowa. So it looks like they're back in the mix. They're going to be competitive. They're going to win some races. They're going to have couple or three guys or so in the championship chase. That's for sure now. So, you know, I look more from them down the road. They're going to Loudon this weekend. Why wouldn't they run good there? Richmond's coming up down in some other places. I think the Ford fans have something to stick their chest out about now.
In the same way that Ford is on the way up, Toyota seem to be on the way down. So is there a reason to panic for the Toyota teams?
I feel like they're probably nervous would be my word for them right now. I mean, a lot of attention and speculation around Martin Truex, and he's made his decision that he won't be back next year. We'll kind of see how that goes for that team the rest of the year. Will it pump them up, you know, to give Martin some, you know, try to get him a couple wins before his last full-time season is over? I don't know. There's, you know, Ty Gibbs has been kind of up and down all year. He doesn't seem like the last few races, to me, he's had quite the speed that he did earlier in the year. But the big thing with him is he needs to finish races. When he's running good, he needs to finish them out. Denny Hamlin is Denny Hamlin. Christopher Bell, the talent, the knowledge, the equipment, everything's there. They just haven't been putting it all together. So now's the time of year guys have got to get things going. It's not going to be that far at all, that long, until we're talking about, okay, the playoffs are starting.
Well, the concern's not even the Joe Gibbs racing team, because I mean, you talked about the equipment, the talent. It's how far off 2311 and Legacy Motor Club seem to be. Legacy Motor Club seems to be out to lunch, and 2311 is really struggling right now.
2311 has not made any gains, really. You know, Reddick's shown some speed. Bubba's still shown some speed here and there. But the thing is consistency. You know, the thing about consistency builds confidence in any race team. It builds morale. It builds that thing of saying, okay, we know what we're doing. We just need a couple little things here and there, and pow, we could win a race. That's it. When you're not consistent, you feel like we're just shooting in the dark. And I don't know what to expect. We may be okay. We may look like we can't outrun the ambulance. You know, so those teams, and what you said about the Legacy Motorsports, I don't know. They're just not hitting on much, except sometimes they hit other things. And you know, I'll be honest with them, they need to get John Hunter off of that. They need to get him to finish some races without tearing his stuff up and causing wrecks and stuff. Kid's got talent, but he drives like he's over his head right now. And I've been a friend of Joe, his dad, for a long time, but John Hunter's got to step up and get the job done.
Well, there was a lot of concern this weekend about the Frankenstein paving at Iowa, but then actually provided a pretty good race, maybe one of the best short tracks of the race, except for maybe the race at Bristol. So we know what happened at Bristol with the tires. Could something outside of the car actually be what fixes short track races, or were those two races just kind of, you know, oddities?
I think, Heather, the common denominator is, I'll say this carefully, when there's a situation to where the drivers and the teams, crew chiefs, whatever, but the drivers have to manage their tires. And I don't want to say it in a way that's like putting guys in peril. Blowing tires out and hitting the wall is never good.
Right.
That's not what we're looking for. But when they have to manage tires to get to a point to where, okay, now it's in line for us to come in and change tires, put on new tires and run another 40, 50, 80 laps and go. And that puts it in the driver's hands, and they've got to use their experience, their talent, their common sense to be able to say, okay.
Common sense? No, I'm kidding.
Well,
I
maybe
kid.
they might have to mail order that from Amazon or somewhere. But anyway, that puts it in the driver's hands, and that puts it to where guys who think while they're driving can manage themselves, and they can take a car that's not quite so good and end up with as good or better result as somebody that's got a lot faster car. That makes the best racing, because it automatically, during those runs throughout the race, you're going to have what I think Darrell Waltrip called comers and goers, guys that are going up front, their tires are still good, or they just put on new tires, they're running faster. You got guys that's been out there, their tires are worn out, they've used them up, whatever. They're going this way, the other guys are going that way, and it causes passing. That's why we had, I don't know. I don't know if there's statistics that showed us how many actual passes there were during the Bristol race for whatever position. It had to be like 6 zillion or something.
Right.
And you know, most short track racers there might be 10 or something like that. So I think it's in that. It's not in the cars. And I don't think it's necessarily in the racetracks itself, but it's in the combination of the tires with the racetrack and what the drivers have to do to manage that situation.
Gene Haas announced that he is staying in NASCAR, creating Haas Factory Team, keeping the Cup charter, and a single Cup charter, and 2 teams in the Xfinity Series. Your thought on that news today?
Well, the first thing I think about it is, you know, I don't know all the particulars of that situation. I don't know what has happened. You know, I'm sure there's been a lot of money spent, so that's a concern for anybody. I don't care who it is. But the biggest thing for me personally is, as somebody that's been in this sport for 50 years, and I've had different jobs, I've seen places close down. It's very heartbreaking. I think about the people working there, not just the drivers as well, not just the crew chief, but all those guys, everybody there, they have jobs. They're making a living. They're doing what they love to do. They're making a living for themselves and their families. They're making the income. They're coming home. They're paying their bills, living their life, and they work hard and put a lot of heart into it to keep this going. Now, there's people there that's put their heart and soul into that team. I'm glad to see, I hope this is a final decision, because it's kind of gone up and down, you know,
right.
last couple of weeks of like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I saw a post on something this past weekend that said, okay, they've made the decision, they're going to shut down everything. And that made me sad. It hurt me, it hurt my feelings. I'm thinking about people that I know that they're friends of mine that work there, make their living there. I know how hard they work. Now it looks like, hopefully this is a final decision, that they're going to keep a Cup team, keep a charter, have 1 Cup team and 2 Xfinity teams. That's quite a few jobs. Right. That's a lot of people that's going to be employed. And I think it would be energizing to me if I was in that camp and I say, okay, now maybe we got a chance to keep going here. There's good equipment there. There's a lot of good people there. There's a lot of knowledge inside that building. And I guarantee you there's a lot of the want to factor in a lot of those people. So I'm interested to see what the particulars are. Like of who, you know, Cole Custer's name has come up. His dad, Joe Custer, is one of the main players there. He's the manager of the thing or whatever. And you know, that kid, Cole's a good young man.
Yes, he is.
And he is a good young man. Whether he'll be back in a Cup car, I don't know that. But, you know, the biggest thing for me now is like, okay, we're not completely losing a race team, a solid big team, race team, that are going to be still be in the fray. They're going to be back. They're going to be competing on 2 different levels now. Not as many teams. That's okay. I mean, that's okay. I think they're probably going to come to a decision like, okay, this is going to be better for us. We can succeed at this level better than we could at the other. That's fine. That's fine. Not everybody can have 6 or 7 race teams in the building and
right.
keep up, man. That's a lot to keep up with. So good luck for them. I'm pulling for them. I hope they do well, and whoever ends up there as crew chiefs, drivers, workers, people, you know, kudos to them. I hope they're successful.
NASCAR heads out to New Hampshire this weekend. What can we expect? Because it feels like if Joe Gibbs is going to get back on track, this is the place to do it. They've won the last 2 years at least. It's one of their better tracks.
Well, nothing like a good trend, consistent, successful trend, going back to a place like that. I agree with you. Good point. It'd be a good place for that team, that company, and for Toyota to get back on track, to get back to say, okay, get to feeling better about themselves, feeling good about themselves, go to New Hampshire, win a race. I'm sure Martin Truex would love to be the guy that would do that, because that's pretty much home base for him.
Everybody wants to win there except for Denny, because he doesn't want to hold up the lobster.
He don't want the lobster. Or maybe he can get one of his little girls or his kid to hold the lobster for him, whatever. But, you know, it wouldn't surprise me for that to happen. You know, Heather, they've obviously got great notes from that racetrack. They know what it takes. They know what to expect. It's the same car they ran last year. They kind of got to have a pretty good confidence level going up there. And, you know, I miss going to New Hampshire. It's been a few years since I've been there. I can tell you this, it's the fan base there, the spectator congregation they're very loyal and they're very passionate. They're great people. They love their stock car racing. They love their NASCAR. They will turn out. I hope the weather's good, and we'll see. To me, it's a racetrack that provides some good racing. It's a 1 mile short track. Maybe we'll see what we saw at Iowa or Bristol on that flat short track. It's kind of a big Martinsville. It'd be probably pretty interesting to watch.
First of all, Daniel, thank you for joining us. We have officially reached the halfway point in the entire season. Talked to some other drivers about kind of the halfway point in the regular season. So halfway through your return to the Cup Series, how would you kind of evaluate your performance so far?
Yeah, man, to be 100% honest with you, I feel like there's been probably 60% of the races, give or take, that I feel like we've ran to our potential. And then you say, well, that's only 60%. What about the other 40? The other 40, I'd say 20 of those, probably 15 to 20% of the other, 100 that's left there. I feel like we've, honestly over kind of, not say extended ourselves, but we've actually ran better than what I think people would expect us to run. Then you have the other 10 or 15% where we've fallen short, as if, man, have we ever been to a racetrack before? So, but that's what makes the Cup Series what it is. The ebbs and flows of a season this long in any form of professional sports is grueling. You're gonna have weekends where you just simply miss it. Obviously, the better teams, the veterans of our sport, just in general, right? They find a way to just show up each and every week. And when they do miss, they miss in small increments. And I feel like us at Colleague Racing here, trying to figure out this year's short track package has been a struggle for us. And I think in general, I'm happy and proud of Trent Owens and this group, how we've handled the overall adversity that we faced. But, I think we've also surprised people on the way at times too. And I am proud of that. I'm proud of this group. I'm proud of the team we have. They're resilient, which I appreciate.
So do you have goals that evolve and change through the years? Are you reevaluating your goals? Are you targeting maybe some racetracks that you could steal a win at? Like when you get to the halfway point, how do you approach the second half?
That's a great question. I think, by this point you want to have, and you should have a pretty good idea of where you stand as a whole, right? Like how's your short track package? How's your intermediate package? How's your super speedway package? How's your high banked short track package? Because it's a different arrow. So, I honestly feel like what we've identified that our mile and a half program is actually, I think, going the right direction. Our super speedway stuff's been really stellar. But the short track package has not been. I mean, it's been a big struggle across the board with our alliance partner with Richard Childress Racing to us. You think of a team of that size and that much depth that when they miss it, right, then that falls to us. And then we may miss some of the crumbs even that they picked that they were really good at getting. So then we're kind of further behind. So, when you get to this part of the season, you got to, for one, have that stuff identified. But that's one thing to identify. You got to be able to go and make change. And I'm happy to know that as we approach the next race on the schedule, a short track with a short track package, like trying to actually do something different. And not that we haven't been trying other stuff, we just have not figured it out. So continuing down, okay, well, what can we all do better and different, and just to try to give us some direction. I would love to tell you that we've got to identify, but it has been just a constant battle of where is it at? I'm staring across the room at Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon. These guys have had success at short tracks along the years, obviously looking at Kyle in particular. And he says, I don't know what we should do. Is that alarming? For sure. But we have some really good minds kind of in those rooms trying to figure out what to do. And we just haven't found it yet.
So when you are going to a short track, or even like this week, kind of a quasi shorter side of the track in New Hampshire, are you just now almost using races as testing? Like, are you throwing things out there during the race weekend? Because you don't get much practice to just try to figure things out for later in the year. Like, what's your mindset going into New Hampshire this weekend?
Yeah, to be completely honest, where we've been at and kind of how far off I feel like we've been, it is a bit of the testing mindset about we can't keep doing the same thing or something similar to what we've done. Like, we've got to make a big fundamental change in our approach. That's not only from the race car prep side, but from me, the driver side, trying to understand different angles and shapes to take and different, studying a lot of different driver trace stuff, just trying to understand, how not to be the weak link. And I know my crew chief's doing that as well, and across the board on every step of our process. And if we go there and we miss it, well, guess what? We've missed it before this year. I think I've been trying to encourage the team from a character standpoint, like, none of this is going to be a damper on our character, right? Like we're gonna go home to our families, and we're gonna show up tomorrow, work on race cars for a living, and I'm gonna show up next week ready to drive race cars for a living, and just try to keep that mindset that at the end of the day we're all pulling the rope same direction, even though if it's not, the progress isn't being made as fast as we want it. But proud of everybody's mindset, college racing, for that in general.
So I would read into that maybe you're looking more forward to Nashville in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say yes, but my gosh, at Iowa, we thought we were going to have a good weekend, and we just completely missed. Honestly, I think our practice stuff at Iowa was closer than what we kind of conformed to for the race. So that falls a lot on all of us, just making those decisions from practice to the race. But, yeah, Nashville's been a strong racetrack for college racing, probably one of their strongest in a sense of an oval. But man, these packages in general have just thrown us in the new tires this year. And yeah, some teams have hit on it, some haven't. I think we've been a little slower to attach to it, to what it takes, really across the board. So yeah, just got to continue to show up and put the work in and try to understand, identify, and adjust.
Do you think that this generation of car maybe loans itself more to people showing up? And I guess maybe this and the combination of the lack of practice, to people showing up regardless of the size of a team and being out to lunch, because you mentioned some of the new, some of the bigger teams can show up and not miss it by much. But you look at Toyota specifically, like Joe Gibbs this week at Iowa. Other than Christopher Bell, they're pretty far out to lunch. I mean, Denny had maybe his worst race all year. So is that the car? Is it practice? Is it a combination of the two?
Both. I think obviously, that the JGR thing was interesting. The fact that obviously where they thought they had built into the race cars, I think 3 of their 4 cars, maybe even some of their alliance there between 11 had issues. So yeah, at least 3 or 4 of their JGR affiliated cars had problems in practice. And where they thought the bones were of the car that they could adjust, luckily, I mean, I think back and gosh, thankfully we had a practice, because had we not, like guys like that would all have been in even more trouble than what they were. You touched on the 11 group. I mean, that was such an uncharacteristic race for them. I think back to maybe this first year of the car going to Martinsville, maybe he had a race similar to that, but they don't miss. Like that group is the benchmark for just preparation and execution and getting through his weekends and maximizing the days. And for them to miss like they did, obviously with the concerns they had from practice, whatever they changed in their cars. I mean, I was well on my way in 30th going back as well, and I see the 11 coming to me, and you're like, well, that's just a bad day. But in reality, you think about, it's one of the top guys of our sport right now, top teams of our sport, and this one little thing they had to change can put them that far off. Well, maybe our off isn't as far away and out of reach as we think it is. And I think that's, that is a testament to the car as far as, man, it's just everybody is so close. You can take the worst car in the field any given Sunday, and at some point in the race, he'll probably match the leader's lap time. Like that is so bizarre to me. But that's also why I love the grind of the Cup Series. It forces you to be uncomfortable, to push yourself out of your comfort zone, to learn new things, new techniques, because you got to adjust a lot as a driver if your car is a little off. But that's what doing it against the best field in the world every Sunday it's about. So I appreciate that, but definitely a lot of it has to do with this car and what all goes into it.
Final question for you: what should we be looking for in New Hampshire? What's the key to getting around that track?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the entry bumps are pretty severe, and I think with the hot summers and the cold winters you have up there in Northeast, I think the kind of the ripples getting into the corner are in a very vulnerable spot from a braking standpoint on the driver side. So your car is bouncing around, and you're trying to predict and look far enough ahead of where you want your car to attach to the surface again, and at that point have a lot of capability in the front tires. And obviously we saw Truex dominate last year and just was super, super fast. And you got to be able to just have a lot of potential in the front end. And when you go to the gas, you can't be too loose, or you'll never complete a pass if you get underneath somebody. So it'd be my first trip there again. I feel like going to all these racetracks for the first time. majority of the racetracks with this next gen car. But I feel like we have some solid support from Chevrolet. We're not a key partner team, but we can receive information from RCR based off, what's going on within the grapevine and the pipelines of Chevrolet. And as that happens, hopefully we continue to, take the right steps to unload at New Hampshire and put on a good show for those awesome fans up in the Northeast.
For my final thought, let's talk about this.
Whenever Chase comes into the car, whenever I don't even know what to say. Whenever we have a new driver into the 19 car, whenever we have a new driver into the 19 car, whoever that is, their experience level will dictate how much input they have in the team.
We've all been there. We've all let something slip that we shouldn't have let slip. We've all told a secret we probably shouldn't have told, or opened our mouth and said something that we regretted almost immediately. God love Christopher for the way he handled this. This is why he's always been one of my favorite guys to talk about in the garage, because he's just so real. Like, he screwed up. He's like, now what? I mean, that's the reaction we would all have, right? If we had done something like that. He didn't try to put PR spin on it. He didn't try to do anything. He just apologized and went on with his day and took it like a champ. Did interviews about his screw up on, I heard one he did with Alan Cavano, which was really great on PRN. Kudos to my coworker on that for sure. And I just love it. It was just such a real moment in the sport where sometimes you don't really get real moments. A lot of the drivers are very guarded. A lot of times when I do Zooms, not all of them, like Daniel, we did, wasn't like this for sure this week, but a lot of times we do Zooms, or PR guys are on there to make sure you don't ask anything weird, or they don't say anything weird. I generally don't have that problem with drivers, but there are a lot of them on there for that reason. So it was just it was a nice moment. It was a funny moment. I'm sorry he screwed up Joe Gibbs' big announcement, but let's be honest, it was not really a secret anyway from the moment it was announced that Truex was retiring. Most of the time, like in Bob Hopper's same tweet, or in the string of tweets that came out, he was like, leading candidate for this job is Chase Briscoe. So it wasn't like it was a secret anyway. It just hadn't officially been announced. But I don't know. I just got a chuckle out of it. I loved it. It made me like Christopher a lot more, because we've all been there for sure. Thanks for joining us on the Backstretch. We'll see you next week.